Hi, this video is a continuation of the question number 5 regarding organization behavior. I have shared a video from one of the lectures from Stanford and another a TEDx one. Both talk about organization cultures. Now, what is significant about culture and what is significant about organization behavior? Before I pick on that, what I want to stress upon and probably lay down first is to most people who are exposed to what organization behavior or an organization structure is about is generally about a top to bottom hierarchy. Unlike HPH has more of a platform kind of a setup where there is no definite man at the top or no definite person at the bottom. We come from a culture wherein everyone is equal at what he's doing, and that is the idea behind, because the functions that you're managing are related to human life, and no human life is less or more than the other one. No human condition is less or more than the other one. As physicians, we cannot have that differentiator that somebody with a malarial fever is a lesser patient and an AIDS uh, consumed another patient is a patient of a greater dignity or value or any such course. Therefore, when there is no specific niche in those terms, there cannot be a niche of hierarchy either. The only niche of hierarchy that exists is on a particular project who is leading the project and who is not leading the project. The same person could be leading another project and could be a part of a team in the other one, and also maybe just a silent observer in another one. So your roles change, your functions change, and so does your capacity change at the same time across working platforms. This dynamism is one part of our culture, and this dynamism comes basically from the idea of customer service, or as Stanford lecture mentions, of each one of us being on the same platform and acquiring similar applauses or similar criticism at the same time, and they go hand in hand. If you do good, your patient does good. If your patient does good, you do good. Sometimes it's contrasting. You are doing good, but your patient is not. Is you your patient is doing good, but you are not. Both the kind of scenarios are possible. So put them on a quadrant, and you will get who fits where and how. And probably that resolution is something that each one of us is capable of doing for ourselves, rather than we classically entering into an HR mode of uh, analyzing who is good and who is bad and scoring each one, which perhaps in a system that we are working with and the system that we look to evolve doesn't really work. There's enough space, there's enough idea, there's enough room on the platform for you to define how you want to function for yourself. There are, of course, certain things that govern each one of us, and we lead by examples when we follow them. When we do not, we perhaps just let things go for us. And coming to the basic question of organization behavior now, and that is what the Stanford lecture talks about in a great detail about culture. We don't need to define cultures sometimes. Sometimes cultures define us. Organization behavior, that which he did not address in detail but did mention at a point, does not come different from human behavior or people behavior. How we behave, how we interact across the board, not with just one person. It could be a customer or patient in our case, it could be our top bosses, it could be our juniors. When I say top bosses, it is our seniors, and it could be somebody who's not a part of the core team but an allied function. Each of these elements is a human, and how you interact with that single individual speaks of your understanding of the culture you work in. That leaves a mark on the culture, and the culture leaves a mark on you. This adaptation, this moderation, and this friction that comes along is all that takes organizations far and far and far. That is the organizational change that has to happen with time, and it happens. It happens at every stage, day in and day out. Now, coming to people behavior, as I said, it's all about interpersonal and is influenced by lot many factors. It is influenced by your personal upbringing. It is influenced by your personal cultures where you come from. It is influenced by this kind of schooling you have had. It is influenced by the kind of friend circles you've had. But more than most of these things, the culture that you bring about to a system is influenced by your own experiences. And when this is said so, is because a clear cut example could be that you have a brother and a sister, or a brother and a brother, or a sister and a sister in the same family. Say you lost your father at an early age. Now, both the kids are exposed to the same condition, the same environment, the same set of people around them. But both can have different behavior, different adaptations to the situation, and the way they behave against it is entirely their personal discretion. So, that personal discretion brings about the difference of ideas into their behaviors and what they take across to their own culture when they interact with people, when they interact with the same set of people. Very commonly, we have heard people say that his younger son is like this and elder son is like this, or elder daughter is like this and younger daughter is like this, or his son is like this and his daughter is like this. Now, those people, the same set of people talking about the same family, but two different individuals in the same family, in the same backdrop, have had two different impressions left on them. And those two different impressions left on them are two different cultures that they imbibe from perceptibly a single soul culture where it comes from. What changed? was behavior. Did the basic culture change? Perhaps not, because they are still relating it to the root and from the root. Their own personal understanding, their own individual cultures, and the culture background from where this reflection is coming from. Thus, even as there are changes that happen, even as that people grow, organizations grow, they become a, from being teams to departments, departments to organizations, verticals, multi conglomerate groups, and from a few tens to thousands of people working together across the board, many of them not knowing each other, except that they live by a common name. There is an affinity that keeps them together. That affinity that keeps them together is what is named as the brand, named as in some other context as value system, in some other context it is labeled as the central idea, in another context the same thing may be labeled as a vision statement, and this, as they say, comes down a pyramid top to bottom. For a platform like HPH, or a company like HPH, which does not believe in a top to bottom idea, but which necessarily looks to grow on a idea that it will spread across transversely rather than vertically, to spread the idea, the vision across is much slower. It's very easy to bring down something from top to the bottom. It is very easy for anything to flow from top to bottom. We know water flows from top to bottom, the simplest example. But we see that the same water, when it is flowing across a plain, how sluggish it is compared to the pace with which it came down. Not only that, when it is moving across the transverse line, it moves across embracing each droplet together. Whereas when it is falling down, there is a gap between those droplets. When those droplets clash upon each other, there is a friction, and that friction damages or leaves an impression hard on the surface that it touches. Either that surface breaks or that surface buckles and loses its shape. But the same water, when it is flowing across the plains and those droplets are hand in hand, colluded together, they still leave an impression on the surface through which they flow. But that impression is more artistic, consistent, and lasting even across over periods of time. To the extent that if it is rocks that is flowing by, it creates edges up between them and creates kind of, you can say, steps between the two edges, so that there is nothing so sharp and damaging even as the stone turns into a pebble. This analogy of water falling down and traveling across a stream is perhaps the most perfect exhibition I can give of what HPH strives for when it says its mission is Swasthasya Swasthya Rakshanam. And it's not easy, it's very, very sluggish. For the simple reason, one, it is very difficult for anybody to make somebody who believes he is perfectly healthy that he needs medical attention. Number two, it is very difficult to believe that you're growing and moving when you're moving along at a very sluggish pace. Number three, it is all the more difficult to motivate self when the results are slow to come by because you're handling situations which do not change overnight. And in this scenario, what keeps things alive, what human behavior is intended to keep things alive, is interaction among themselves, is interaction across chains, across cultures, and keep learning. Co- Coming to a business standpoint, every trade has different ideas and different values and different virtues. Medical system is not something which principally thrives on money making. It is a system, it is an idea which works on social welfare. And honestly, only such businesses have survived over the ages, as far as medicine is concerned, which have not deviated from the central idea of welfare. Any business which has deviated from the idea of welfare of humankind, as far as medicine is concerned, has lost its essence and over a period of time gone into a slow, sudden, not to say, but periodic death. Perhaps the most important example of modern medicine has been the death of the family physician because the family physician lost its value from being a one stop resource where he was not only the record keeper of a family, but also the family physician was intended to be somebody who could be relied and trusted upon. But somewhere through the process of commercialism, it lost its integrity. And when it lost its integrity, it lost the trust of people. And slowly it was phased out, or it got phased out, because perhaps it could not change with the times. The smallest thing that perhaps may not have changed, and we may have observed it in one form or the other, was the way the records were kept. And you saw corporate hospitals replacing those in the electronic form to be available at any time that you want. Whereas this physician would maintain a small diary, and in that diary would have notes for you. And when you visited next, he would go back to refer maybe to an older diary to find what were your past problems, which showed that there was no regular update, there was no regular follow up, there was no consistency of uh, work around what he was doing. So that failed culture got replaced with something which was more meticulous and more customer centric in business sense, where patients were reminded of their follow ups, patients were reminded of their requirements, patients could access their records as and when they wanted, and the computer filing system replaced the family physician. And what remained was just a general physician who could do without a family physician because he had the records in a repository. Therefore, with times, with technology, with things that have come up, it is important that we make these adaptations. The idea of HPH for me is something that I have lived with for 21 years, or rather 22 years, I can say, almost a quarter of a time to go. And what comes off in 22 years is that the world is yet catching up with something that I could see those many years ago, wherein I led a project which was all about automation. I, at that age, did not even know the word automation, but today I can say that it was all about automation. But the core of it was always human centric, because there were elements where I could think about having an orphan into the system, growing through the system, being a part of the system, or going out of the system, be his choice. I could envision patient access to information anywhere on the globe for any kind of a system in the world, and he need not bother whether he has to access this information and how, except that he should have his identity with him. That should be enough to prove that if he is standing in, say, a US or in a remote village somewhere in India, if there is an HPH, he gets his details right there on that physician's table. Or if he wants it for some other physician outside of HPH, he simply requests for it and he gets it on that physician's table. The centricity, the entire idea behind it was not to really milk him in terms of money, but to make ease of access of information about himself, and also sensitize him periodically over, say, quarterly periods, if not monthly, about what suits his particular lifestyle, his particular life needs, his particular body needs. And this creates a binding chain between the physician and the patient. And the trust between the physician and the patient grows. HPH benefits from that trust because not only does the patient recognize the physician, It also recognizes HBH as that repository, that service provider, which brings this physician to this patient together. Therefore, HBH is a facilitator, a program convener, or a program supporter at different stages. However, it leaves that freedom and independence between the physician and the patient to go about what they want to do in the best of the interest. Yes, because this involves HBH, and there has to be a governance about the functions it is involved with. There is a monitoring system which allows for an intervention centrally at any point across the board for any person, wherein this central body allows an interjection at both the levels. It could be the patient, it could be the physician at the same time, with the idea of improvising on what has been prescribed so that it becomes easily adaptable for the patient and even understood by the patient why those changes, why those investigations, why those medications are required, or why certain medication is stopped, why certain medication is replaced, what is the future course of action, why that future course of action, what if that future of course of action does not result in something that is expected. Answering all those questions and enabling the physician to be able to answer those questions on his own, uh, in case he wants to do it. This is the idea behind HPH. The entire thing is very, very customer centric, very, very uh, individual centric, and it is expected that we uphold this integral idea of how do we service our patients. That is why, if I were to sum it up before I ended this, I would say go back to Hutchinson, go back to a Davidson, or go back to a Charak and or a Madhav Nidan, and look at the most integral principle which says talk, converse, engage, get the maximum information you can by observations, avoiding inflicting pain onto the patient, which means minimal investigations, which means a empathetic questionnaire, which means no rigid questionnaires. Let the patient start from the toe and go to the head, or head to the toe. Let it be his idea of storytelling. And when you have this composite together, it demands time from you. Fact is, you cannot tight jacket value of time that in this much time, this is the amount of money that you can earn or you should be earning. The moment that comes in place, you lose the essence of humanitarianism, which is core and core to all welfare activities. Therefore, clinically speaking, proper history will help you limit investigations to the most appropriate ones, will help you limit medications to the most appropriate ones, and will always bring the patient back to you as a trust. Coming to conclude, key to organization behavior is understanding the objectives of the organization. Understanding of objectives of the organization helps you understand how do you gain focus and where do you align yourself, how much do you align yourself, and that helps you define your own existence in an organization. Platforms like HPH have no exit routes, so you don't move out, but they help you define what is the amount of work, what is the kind of work, what is the quality of work you can do. So it's all more on the personal enrichment side, more on the personal development side, more on the personal improvement side that organizations like HPH help you evolve through. And there's nothing that really plays by emotions of fear or insecurity, but in all true sense, it lets you stand by together to achieve the best out of you, the best out of your team members, and the best for your patients and for the platform, the companies that you're working with. Thank you.